Hello, my name is Nawana Smith, and for my final project, I decided to look into police departments that decided to enforce the use of body cameras when their officers are on duty. So to start off with, on my presentation, I looked into some of the body camera laws, and some that kind of jumped out to me from the ACLU was Sections 1, and Section 1 states that only law enforcement officers with the authority to conduct searches and make arrests shall be permitted to wear body cameras. Such body cameras shall be worn in a location and manner that maximizes the camera's ability to capture video footage of the officer's activities. Section 1B states that both the video and audio recording functions of the body camera shall be activated whenever a law enforcement officer is responding to a call for service or at the initiation of any other law enforcement or investigation encounter between a law enforcement officer and a member of the public, except that when an immediate threat to the officer's life or safety makes activating the camera impossible or dangerous, the officer shall activate the camera at the first reasonable opportunity to do so. The body camera shall not be deactivated until the encounter has fully concluded and the law enforcement officer leaves the scene. It then goes in to talk about some subsections, and two of the subsections I picked out were subsection G and I. G stating that body cameras shall not be used to gather intelligence information based on the First Amendment protected speech, association, or religion, or to record activity that is unrelated to the response to a call or service of a law enforcement or investigative encounter between law enforcement officer and the member of the public. Subsection I states that body camera video footage shall be retained by the law enforcement agency that employs the officer whose camera captured the footage or an authorized agent thereof for 6 months from the date if it was recorded, after which time such footage shall be permanently deleted. During that 6-month retention period, the following person shall have the right to inspect the body camera footage. In my next slide, I go into looking at states that had pending body camera laws, and those states included Connecticut, District of Columbia, Florida, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. The following slide, I have two pictures, and the first photo in all blue, it shows the states that have the pending legislative for the use of body cameras, and then in the second picture, it's more colorful and it goes into stating the body camera laws and which states had public access. So in blue, there are the states that did not have public access laws, and in orange there are states like Texas and Florida that had passed the access to the public for such body cameras. And then in green, in states like Illinois and Indiana, there was no public access that had been passed for body camera laws. And in my next slide, I looked into states that had body-worn open record laws, and of those states there were 18, and they were Connecticut, District of Columbia, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Minnesota, Missouri, Nevada, North Dakota, New Hampshire, Oregon, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, and Washington. Following those states, I looked into some of the state requirements for the use of body cameras, and of the many states that were passing the laws for the use of body cameras, only 5 had enacted a requirement for officers to use body-worn cameras, and those states were California, Connecticut, Florida, Nevada, and South Carolina. And according to cncsl.org. Connecticut laws require the division of state police and special police forces, as well as municipal police officers receiving grant funds, to wear body cameras while interacting with the public. California and Nevada laws require certain members of the state highway patrol to wear body cameras, and in South Carolina, their laws require, contingent on state funding, that every police department implement a body camera program. I then go on to my question, which was, do body cameras deter police brutality, with my independent variable being body cameras and my dependent variable being police brutality. So we can now go on to talking about the arguments against the use of body cameras. And in my first point, the National Institute for Justice states that federal law blocks the warrantless capturing of photo or video images of people where they have an expectation of privacy, and most states have similar laws. It then goes on to talk about how citizens are concerned with how footage will be stored and maintained, and under what conditions will the public have access to such evidence. Another reason why many were against the use of body cameras was because officers were concerned about when they should turn on cameras and when to turn them off. And in the Rialto Police Department, it required the officers to turn on the camera whenever they would leave their patrol cars to speak with a civilian. And my final point was, skeptics believe that video footage will necessarily lead to more just outcomes in excessive force cases, or even officers will erase any footage before it has the chance to be reviewed, and it will likely go unnoticed or unpunished by their supervisors. Okay, and then those 4 body cameras as stated by Gene Greenbrier, one of my references. He stated that an estimated 4,000 civilians were killed by police between the years of 2005 and 2015, and only 54 officers were charged with fatal shootings while on duty. And of those 54, 35 of them have their cases resolved, and 21 of the officers were acquitted or saw their charges dropped. Following that notion, after the shooting of Michael Brown, President Obama initiated a body-worn camera program on December 14th of 2014. The program would purchase about 50,000 body cameras for the use of police officers across the country. Another reference of mine by the name of Rosanna Summers stated that reformers plainly accept that more video footage will lead to more indictments would lead to more indictments against officers who use excessive force. Indeed, advocates calling for all state and local police to be required to wear cameras have seen fit to name their proposal the Mike Brown Law. Gene Greenbrier also states that police excessive use of force is a reality, and it has become a public safety and health crisis. There was a Pew Research Center poll conducted back in December of 2014, and it found that 87 of the respondents thought body cameras were a good idea. Breaking it down into the more so political side of it, so 79% of Republicans were in favor of the use of body cameras, whereas 90% Democrats were for it, and then 88% of independent individuals were in favor of it as well. My final reference that I looked at was a quote by Laura Blackburn, and she states, What in her statement was to serve and to protect is the oath that police officers all over the United States take upon completion of their training before they go out into the streets. Yet that promise, indeed that solemn oath, all too often is left in the locker rooms. Following that, I came up with my own argument for the situation, and I state that although arguments suggest that the use of body cameras worn would go against a citizen's Fourth Amendment rights, I believe it is a necessary precaution that should be taken. Based on the amount of officers we see that are involved in unnecessary shootings of citizens, it should be a law that is implemented nationally so that the next time someone is pulled over for any reason, there is an audio or video recording of the encounter. And I end you with a quote saying that we have a voice, and if we want to see the change in the world, we must utilize it, because if we don't stand for something, we won't stand for anything at all. Thank you.